There is a quiet moment in many relationships that almost nobody recognizes while it is happening. It doesn't arrive through an argument or a betrayal. It arrives through comfort. One day you stop wondering whether they will choose you because you become convinced they always will. The uncertainty that once made every conversation feel alive slowly disappears, replaced by a feeling that everything has finally become secure. It feels like progress. It feels like trust. Yet hidden inside that comfort is a change so subtle that neither person notices it until the relationship begins to feel strangely different. Nothing appears broken, but something has already begun to fade. The awareness that every moment together still deserves attention. Most people believe relationships end because of dramatic mistakes. They replay one argument, one sentence, one decision, hoping to find the exact point where everything collapsed. Reality is often much quieter. Human emotions rarely change all at once. They change through repetition. The mind naturally adapts to whatever becomes constant. What once demanded your attention eventually becomes part of the background, not because it has lost its value, but because your brain no longer treats it as something new. That same process quietly enters relationships. The person who once felt impossible to stop thinking about slowly becomes someone your mind believes it already understands completely. In the beginning, every interaction carries possibility. A simple message can change your entire day. A smile lingers in your thoughts for hours because you don't know when you'll see it again. Even silence feels meaningful because it leaves room for imagination. Uncertainty keeps attention awake. Every small gesture feels larger because the future remains unwritten. As certainty grows, that heightened awareness slowly fades. The relationship doesn't necessarily become worse. It simply becomes familiar. Familiarity brings comfort, but it can also remove the emotional sharpness that once made ordinary moments unforgettable. The strange part is that nobody chooses this transformation. It happens automatically. The brain is designed to conserve attention. You stop noticing the sound of a fan after a few minutes. You forget the feeling of your shoes while walking. Constant experiences fade from awareness so your mind can focus on change instead. Relationships are not exempt from this rule. When someone's kindness becomes permanent, it often stops surprising you. When their presence becomes guaranteed, your mind slowly stops treating it as something that could be lost. Appreciation quietly turns into expectation without either person realizing the exchange has taken place. This is why becoming easier rarely feels dangerous. It feels loving. You answer every call. You rearrange your schedule without hesitation. You become available before they even ask. Each decision seems harmless because it comes from genuine care. No single sacrifice changes the relationship, but together they create a pattern where your presence no longer feels like a choice. It becomes an assumption. And assumptions have a strange effect on attention. The less effort the mind believes something requires to keep, the less consciously it notices it. When people begin feeling less appreciated, their instinct is usually to give more. They become more patient, more understanding, more accommodating. They believe greater effort will restore the closeness they miss. That strategy works in many areas of life. Work rewards consistency. Skills improve with practice. Relationships can behave differently. If the emotional pattern never changes, increasing the same behavior often makes it blend even further into the background. More of what has already become expected rarely feels extraordinary again. Perhaps you've experienced this without realizing it. At first they were curious about everything. They wanted to know what you feared, what made you laugh when no one else was around, what kind of future you secretly imagined. Over time those questions became less frequent. Not necessarily because they cared less, but because they believed they already knew the answers. Curiosity survives on discovery. Once another person feels completely understood, the habit of exploring them often becomes weaker. The relationship slowly shifts from learning each other to managing each other. That shift changes more than conversations. It changes identity. Instead of asking what feels true to you, you begin asking what keeps everything peaceful. You postpone your own plans because being available feels easier than disappointing someone. You soften opinions that once mattered to avoid unnecessary conflict. Little by little, your decisions revolve less around your own life and more around maintaining the rhythm of someone else's. None of these compromises feel important on their own. Yet identity rarely disappears through one dramatic sacrifice. It fades through countless ordinary adjustments that seem insignificant until you realize you no longer recognize your own reflection. The painful irony is that you believe you are becoming a better partner while slowly becoming easier to predict. Human attention is naturally drawn toward what changes. We notice what surprises us, what grows, what reveals something unexpected. When every reaction becomes familiar, every habit becomes expected, and every conversation follows the same emotional path, the relationship begins operating on memory rather than observation. People stop seeing who you are becoming because they believe they already know who you are. And perhaps that is where emotional distance quietly begins. Not when love disappears, but when discovery does. Because the moment two people stop expecting to find something new inside each other, they often begin relating more to yesterday's version of the relationship than to the living person standing in front of them. That is why emotional distance almost never announces itself. It doesn't ask for attention because it grows inside routines that already feel normal. Days continue as they always have. You still spend time together. You still laugh at familiar jokes. You still say goodnight and make plans for tomorrow. From the outside, nothing appears different. Yet something subtle has changed beneath those ordinary moments. The relationship has stopped creating new memories and has started repeating old ones. Life begins moving in circles instead of forward, and without realizing it, both people start living beside each other rather than discovering each other. This is what makes emotional invisibility so confusing. You cannot point to the exact day it began because there wasn't one. Instead, you notice tiny absences that feel too small to matter on their own. They no longer ask how you're really feeling. They stop noticing when your mood changes. Your excitement no longer becomes their excitement. Your silence no longer sparks curiosity. None of these moments are dramatic enough to confront, yet together they create the unsettling feeling that something important has quietly slipped away. You begin searching for a reason, and because you cannot see the gradual change around you, you often blame yourself instead. That conclusion feels personal, but it usually isn't. Human attention naturally drifts toward movement. Anything that remains completely predictable slowly becomes easier to overlook. Think about a painting hanging in your home. The first day you notice every detail. Months later, you walk past it without seeing it at all. The painting did not become less beautiful. Your perception simply adapted to its constant presence. Relationships can fall into the same rhythm. The person themselves has not become less valuable, but the habit of noticing them begins to fade. Feeling unseen creates a dangerous instinct. You try to become even more useful. You solve problems before they appear. You apologize faster. You forgive sooner. You ask for less because you don't want to become another source of pressure. At first, these choices feel generous. Eventually, they become automatic. Your emotional needs slowly move to the background while preserving the relationship becomes your main priority. Without realizing it, you stop participating as an equal and begin existing as emotional support for someone else's world. The tragedy is that this often happens so gradually you mistake it for maturity. You tell yourself that healthy relationships require sacrifice. They do. But sacrifice without balance slowly turns into self-erasure. There is a difference between making space for another person and quietly disappearing to keep them comfortable. One strengthens connection. The other slowly teaches both people that your inner world can always wait. As that pattern continues, conversations begin changing in ways that are difficult to describe. You stop sharing thoughts simply because they feel unnecessary. They already know you, don't they? You stop explaining new dreams because they remember the old ones. You stop revealing fears because you've already talked about them before. Slowly, the relationship becomes filled with updates instead of discoveries. You discuss schedules, responsibilities, and daily routines, but the parts of yourself that continue evolving remain unspoken. The relationship becomes informed about your life without truly witnessing your growth. This is where loneliness becomes especially cruel. You can spend every day beside someone and still feel increasingly unknown. Not because they stopped loving you, but because they stopped expecting you to change. And perhaps you stopped showing them that you had. Every human being is constantly becoming someone new through experiences, disappointments, ambitions, and quiet realizations. When a relationship stops making room for those changes, both people slowly begin loving a memory instead of the person standing in front of them. People often describe this stage by saying, "We just grew apart." It sounds like something that happened naturally, almost as though distance appeared on its own. But people rarely wake up strangers overnight. More often, they simply stop remaining curious enough to notice who the other person is becoming. Familiarity replaces observation. Assumptions replace questions. Memory replaces presence. The relationship continues, but attention quietly leaves before either person realizes it has gone. Perhaps that explains why so many endings feel impossible to understand. There is no dramatic betrayal to point toward. No obvious villain. No single conversation that changed everything. Instead, there are hundreds of ordinary days that looked perfectly fine while they were happening. Looking back, those days seem harmless. Living through them, they felt comfortable. Only later do you realize they were slowly teaching both people to stop looking beyond what already felt familiar. The most unsettling part is that neither person usually intended for this to happen. No one wakes up hoping to overlook someone they once adored. It is simply easier to notice what is changing than what always remains. When growth, surprise, and curiosity quietly disappear, attention often follows. The relationship begins running on habit instead of awareness, and habit, no matter how comforting, cannot replace the feeling of truly seeing another human being. By the time someone finally senses that something feels different, they often search for one missing piece that can fix everything. But emotional distance is rarely built from one missing moment. It is built from countless unnoticed ones. Each too small to matter alone. Together, powerful enough to change the way two people experience each other. By the time most people realize something has changed, they begin searching for the moment everything fell apart. They replay conversations, quiet evenings, and ordinary days, hoping to find the beginning of the ending. But there usually isn't one. The relationship didn't collapse in a single moment. It slowly drifted through routines that felt completely harmless while they were happening. The hardest truth is that you didn't lose each other because love suddenly disappeared. You lost the habit of discovering each other. The conversations became familiar. The reactions became predictable. The questions became fewer. Somewhere between comfort and routine, attention quietly gave way to assumption. That's why trying harder often feels empty. Giving more of what has already become expected rarely changes how it's perceived. You cannot restore curiosity by becoming even more predictable. The problem was never a lack of affection. It was the slow disappearance of awareness. Perhaps that's why so many people say, "Nothing bad happened." They're right. There was no dramatic betrayal or unforgettable argument. Just countless ordinary moments that slowly stopped feeling extraordinary. Day after day, appreciation quietly became expectation, and expectation eventually became emotional blindness. Looking back, the beginning and the ending can both be real. The excitement at the start wasn't fake, and the distance at the end wasn't necessarily proof that love never existed. They simply reflected two different stages of the same relationship. One was built on discovery. The other settled into familiarity. Maybe that's the most unsettling realization of all. People rarely lose each other in one unforgettable goodbye. Sometimes they simply stop seeing each other while standing in the same room. Not because they stopped caring, but because certainty convinced them there was nothing left to notice. And by the time they understand what was truly lost, they aren't mourning a single moment. They're mourning all the ordinary days they believed nothing was changing, while everything already was.